talking music, building businesses, and the grit in the journey. We're Skrizz and Adam, and welcome to The Rise.
What's going on, guys? This is Grizzly with The Rise. We are here with Adam Rosen and our second guest ever for episode 14, the big 1-4. I'm currently in East Hanover, New Jersey. Adam, where are you at?
Right now, I am in Cyprus.
Cyprus, very nice. Okay.
Yeah, not many people probably know where Cyprus is. Honestly, I didn't really know where Cyprus was until a couple months ago, which probably says a lot about my geography skills, but beautiful country. Anyone who hasn't been here, I got to say Cyprus and Hawaii are probably are without a doubt, two of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. And that is a good segue into our second guest, Chaz. We are psyched to have you on here joining us for The Rise. This is it's always a big deal anytime we can get a guest, and you're following a real legend in Ken Lewis. So we're excited to have another legend.
Oh yeah. Back-to-back legends. We're going to find out why.
Yeah, back-to-back legends. So Chaz, welcome to The Rise.
You're in Hawaii right now?
I'm in Hawaii right now.
Where in Hawaii? I know there are multiple islands.
I'm on Oahu, so the city.
I don't even know what that means. I like it. Great. So Adam, take it away.
Yeah, so Chaz, we got connected to actually one of the guys that's on your album, and I know you guys do some work together, Thomas. So shout out to Thomas. So I'm really excited to have you on. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're working on?
So my name is Chaz. I'm from here on Oahu in the islands. I grew up here. Grew up in a not the best neighborhood, but have a lot of pride in my ghetto, Kalihi. Yeah, you wouldn't believe, man. When Fast and the Furious came out, there was like drifting and drugs everywhere. Just like anywhere else in the country in the 80s and 90s. But no, grew up here. Pursued the music. I was gonna be I wanted to be a medical researcher when I was going to college, and ended up not doing that.
What's the medical researcher? If you want to elaborate on that.
I just wanted to study diseases and how to cure them. I wanted to do work on cancer research and stuff, like my cousin. And then I just got into the music life. Been doing it ever since. Did a stint in LA.
Can we back a little bit? So you made the transition into wanting to pursue music as your profession and passion in life around the college time or after college time. What is your relationship with music prior to that? And just before you get into it, it's very often we hear in the country sphere, there are people that were baseball players in college and they pick up a guitar for the first time at 20 years old. And the next thing you know, they're Luke Combs. And then there are people that have literally been playing music since they were 3 years old, which is me. Not saying anyone's better than the other, but we feel it's the same story, but it's actually a very more dynamic than that.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a musical family, but no one really did music for a living. Music was always something that we did for fun. We jammed, as a family, but they would always say music is something we love. We don't do this for work. And the reality of that is because in Hawaii, our most celebrated, internationally known artists who play Hawaiian or reggae music, we call it Hawaiian music, our version of that. Cool. They don't do it for their careers. It's not a full-time living career for them. Really? They might work. Yeah. So they'll work construction or air conditioning repair.
That's really
interesting. And so the music entertainment economy is all kinds of messed up. I would equate it to Jamaica, where tourism, is the primary economic model in Jamaica, right? But sometimes at the detriment of the local economy and the local people.
Totally.
And so I would say that for us, when you know that your family, friends, and friends of friends are, these well-known musicians, you see them, you hang out with them, but then they're working day jobs, then the community consciousness is kind of don't do music, right? That's of course my parents would say that. And right
there. I have so many questions. You're saying something incredibly insightful. So I have, like I said, a ton of questions, but initially my question is, how much of this is sheerly an economic thing where it's the reason, what was the term for the genre again?
What genre? Oh, Hawaiian music.
Hawaiian. Is that, am I saying it right? Okay. Okay. Is like the reason they aren't is well, okay. Is the reason I want to word this correctly? Is the reason these Hawaiian artists that are incredible and well known around Hawaii, just simply because the music's market only exists in Hawaii, and because of that the market's so small, or is it a cultural thing? Is it more like you are expected to work something else?
Yeah, I think it's cultural because
okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, because the music is extremely well known and viable, right? Like a reggae or a Hawaiian artist in Hawaii can go on tour all summer long, up and down the West Coast and the Midwest, and a lot of the Pacific Islands, like Guam, even Philippines, Australia, New Zealand. So when they're on tour, and they're taking a break from their day jobs, like they're on tour. They could be on tour a lot of the year, but even then, it's still very difficult. And most of my peers in music just started working trades, right after high school, or went to community college or regular college and then went into their trade.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I think it's cultural. I don't think it's purely an economic model. I think it's definitely like a combination of like there's like what your family says, so cultural, right? There's the economic lack of diversity and competitive market, you could say, and then also like the lack of education, right? Like Hawaii does not rank very high in terms of like public education in the United States. And as we know, when public education suffers, the thing that gets depleted first is the arts. So, we don't grow up believing that music is something that we like cherish and like do for work because of that, right? Because like it's not like I'd have a college career counselor who's saying like, oh, you want to be a musician, you want to like play for like a big artist, go to MI in LA for 2 years and then you can audition to go be in the next pop stars backup band, or this is how you make money in music publishing. Like there's no sense of that whatsoever. Like we have some institutions now that have that sort of education, like Mele at Honolulu Community College, and it's a 2 years associate's program, but that wasn't available when I was in college. I think it started right as I was graduating from college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's why I love when we got connected, Chaz, what I loved about what you're doing is you're trying to make it local based, where you were telling me a lot of the songs, the music, the TV shows that are maybe based in Hawaii, they use artists from outside of Hawaii. And I know that's a big thing that you're doing is you want to use local artists and show off those local artists.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one area that thrives, even when, the economy and like the world shuts down, right, because of COVID, is still marketing, still advertising. It's still television and film. And to me, it exposed this issue that my friends that are musicians, they lost all their gigs. They lost all of their side hustles. And even like for some of them that do play professionally, they're playing in restaurants, maybe 5 days a week, playing for tourists and I guess local people eating, dinner or lunch. But they lost their jobs for 2 years. They're not necessarily maybe geared towards like being like famous artists with records, but meanwhile, like my friends that work in TV and film, like they're fine, right? And I think it exposed this thing that like these people and musicians that we love in Hawaii, there's no real support for them while these other systems thrive.
Understood.
And I think it's like really important that like we support local music wherever you live, right? I'm not saying like, oh, just care about Hawaiian music. I think it's like wherever you live, if you are going to put music in your advertisement on, say, radio or play the music in your local mall, why not support the local music? If you're already paying money to some network or subscription for a company, you might as well spend that money locally, because what happens is, say, like there's a well-known bank here, right? They work with a advertising agency, I believe, in LA. And they hire all local actors. It's shot in Hawaii. The video crew is in Hawaii. but the music was probably written by some guy in Denver, Colorado, right? So they spend all this money putting into all these other economies, and then you hire local actors. But the back end revenue that's not SAG is going to some random guy who lives in like Nashville or Denver, right? The music is not representative of where we come from. It's not helping someone who lives like down the street, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. So that's just kind of my take on it.
How is the streaming at this moment in time of Hawaiian music? I feel like that could be the bridge where it's like, if all these local Hawaiian artists can be streaming well and generating millions of dollars, and then suddenly getting the music everywhere, you can create this local infrastructure where they're not working in like hotels and restaurants anymore. It's thriving.
So it's kind of interesting. Like, there are some that know how to stream really well, and there are others that are really great, but maybe because they don't have a support team that understands like digital music marketing, especially for streaming, they're not streaming at the level that they should be.
Sure.
Also, like Spotify has less incentives for reggae music in general.
Very small infrastructure.
Yeah, very small, right? There's a billion editorials for lo-fi, right? But like Hawaiian is not the case.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of that regional stuff.
So to me, it's like one, the local artists have to release enough music and record it at a good quality that streaming can be viable, because a lot of them don't release music every single month. I would say that there are very few groups that release records regularly, like on a 1.5 year cycle at minimum, and there are even less that can just release a single at least like once every 2 months. My recommendation for artists is always releasing a song every month if you can. Has to be well written, has to be well recorded and professionally finished.
It's all gotta be good.
But same thing, right? It's like who you know, and like if you don't have a team that's like influencing that marketing and also the creation of that music, I think that there's no processes in place. It's kind of like my producer friends in LA, when you work with them, like you work with those people because you want a great song, right? Like you're going to work with like a Ken Lewis, right? Because if I work with this guy, we're going to get a great song out of it.
Sure.
Here, it's kind of like, I have a song, I'm going to go in the studio, I'm going to pay this guy like all my money, and then he's going to like finish everything, give it back to me, I'm going to put it on the radio. And so it's like, there's such a unique environment for music in Hawaii, because the predominant airplay on radio, Adam, you might know this from living here, that is the independent music, right? It's Hawaiian. It's these unsigned artists.
That's awesome.
And Hawaiian music. The predominant markets are like indie music. It's Hawaiian and Hawaiian.
Did you guess the ratio of like the Ed Sheerans to the locals? Like, do you have any idea?
I would say
80,
that
20, 70, 30.
And as far as like newer artists, like say like 20 years old at most, like you could probably assume it's like there, for every like one signed local artist, you might have like 5 independent.
Wow.
But because they are not releasing music regularly, I think program directors are more apt to receive music from the West Coast. So like,
of course,
like the West Coast reggae artists, right, or Hawaiian artists, they have teams, right? They're signed to Capitol. They are being put in rooms to write songs like during record cycles, and so and they also know how to run a radio promotion campaign, right? It's
for sure.
They know to spend the $2,000 a month and all this stuff, right? And so like the radio stations and program directors are going to receive that music, they're getting it regularly, and they're going to play that if the independent artists don't rise to the occasion of getting music done and submitting it. But I've seen it so many times where program directors here will take like not even a finished version of the song, right? Accept it and play it on the radio, right? Or the song is like maybe not even on Spotify. They're like, "Oh, this is your new song? Great, I'm gonna play it tomorrow." That happens so regularly, and the access to those program directors here is, I think, like unlike any other place.
Like it.
Right. It's crazy, right? It sounds like we're living in the 90s again, right? Like, yeah.
More like the 70s where it's like, DJ, here's the song, and then they're like,
Yeah.
5 times overnight.
Yeah.
I've never heard of anything like that ever.
Yeah. So it's like there's a lot of opportunity, but no one does anything, right?
That's like it's I mean, if I'm zooming out right now in this conversation, you're hitting me with a lot of information I've never known before. Is like there's an amazing opportunity here. It's almost like this like deep lack of understanding within the scene of the infrastructure of how to almost work together and like formulaically beat the system like we are doing in Nashville, like we are doing in LA, we are doing in Atlanta. If you can just do that in Hawaii, it could be a straight line up.
Yeah.
And you seem to have all the answers. Like, so hopefully everyone hears this podcast and starts, I mean, you're preaching all the things that rappers have been saying, like my mentors have been saying. I think
a lot of your motto
I kind of want to give to you real quick is like, you're talking about like music's so rich in culture in Hawaii. And like the fact that the infrastructures of radio are supporting it at that level is like, it's a godsend. But you're saying like the superstars are also construction workers. And I think for someone like me, when I was 19, one of my best friends is a rapper named Chris Webby. And like I produced a project for him. And when he put it out, it was like the first time I ever made a beat. It was like the second beat I ever made. It was like, it wasn't
sick,
but it got like 35,000 downloads the first day. And I was like, I can do this for a living. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, it very much is like when you grow it's like, oh, it's like my friend Chris does it, so I can do it. You know what I mean? I still think that to this day. I was just at his house. You know what I mean? And it's like, there is so much opportunity in Hawaii. I mean, clearly, like the culture is very deeply rooted in this music you're talking about.
And it's when tourists go too. When tourists go, the difference between Hawaii and a lot of other places that you might vacation that are beautiful and on the water and have great beaches is you go to Hawaii partly for the culture, where that is a big thing that you want to take in when you go to Hawaii is the culture, and a big part of culture, any culture, is around the music. And when I'm driving around, I'm not listening to top 40 music. I'm not listening to country. I might be listening to you, Skrizz, but that's just about it for mainland type music. But no, I'm listening to Hawaii-based music, Hawaiian music. And that's what I want to be doing when I'm driving to the North Shore or driving around the coast. I want to be listening to Hawaiian music, feeling like I'm part of the culture. And that's what I really love about your album right now, is it doesn't just feel like you're listening to Hawaiian artists, but it also feels like this is something that top 40, around the mainland would appreciate. Like, it's an easy listen to, it's an enjoyable listen, it's an uplifting listen, but it's also something that, you're cruising around in Wisconsin or New York or California or wherever, you also vibe to your music. That's what I got from it. It's great for Hawaii, but it's also great in the mainland too.
Man, thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah, we wanted to make something that we could prove to our peers, and then also like the general industry populace, that it is possible to make commercial music in Hawaii. I know a lot of my friends, even my elders, have been very hesitant to do that type of music, even though they love it, they listen to it on their own. But once again, if the money comes from starting your career in this one area, then you kind of have to, right? Like, if you want to do music for a living, what was told to me was you have to do Hawaiian music, you have to do reggae and Hawaiian music. And I did do that. When I first started, I was playing with every single group that would take me, every artist, right? And then one day I just realized that, well, I could move to the mainland. I've met people that are doing music for a living. Why don't I just go and figure out what they know instead of what I know? I needed to humble myself and say, like, I don't have all the answers. It's like, oh, what is that guy? You don't have all the answers, Sway. It's like, I don't have all the answers, and if I don't know, like, what at least my college education helped me with is, like, if you don't know, you go and find out, right? You go do the research, you put in the work, and I would take any internship that I could or job just so I could be around the music more, around people that knew something more than what I had learned in my public education, right? But yeah, we have an opportunity right now to not just tell companies in Hawaii that they should sync local music, but also, like, we know people that are doing it. Look, like, these are people we love and celebrate. Here's music of theirs that you could use instead of using, the $10 track from, I don't know, said company, right? Nashville, right? and we want to encourage like our peers to say like, hey, like there's other ways of making money in music, not just performing or making the records that you've been making. Yeah, so the record is like, it's a statement piece. We're not trying to be artists. We're not trying to go out on tour. We're just like your local producer, songwriting team, and we just like try to work with other artists here, you know, and we're thankful we have a publishing deal that helps us pay the rent, you know, that allows us to make other types of music.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Have there been any like major mainland artists that like collaborated with a Hawaiian artist and like made a record that like you are doing right now, but hit a kind of like maybe global sphere where it reflected Hawaii and it reflected the mainland and it streamed in Russia? You know what I mean? Like something that really made a splash in that kind of a sense, or is this all kind of a new concept?
I would say there are definitely instances of collaborations that have happened in that way. Okay. But in more recent times, we haven't seen it like in terms of like a phenomena, right? Like where, like, you know, at one point everyone wanted to work with like a Dirty South producer, right? Like everyone wanted their own Nelly or their own Manny Fresh, right? Or same thing with like Atlanta. I haven't seen that with Hawaii where collaborators on a national scale or say like on the continent in LA are like, oh, we should do a track with like one of those Hawaiian guys from Hawaii. I think one instance I can think of is J Boog. He's like a Hawaiian, but also like he does like the raga rap style. He had a song that Rihanna, I think, like covered or like sampled. I want to say it was called "Do It Again." It was a while ago.
It was Do It Again. I think
it was Do It Again. Yeah,
I think so.
I think who else?
But that would definitely make a splash, at least on like the awareness of the sound and the culture and the feel. Yeah. But there's been no Drake feature yet. When there's a Drake feature, that'll change.
I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, I think no.
You know, I think our best export was probably, you know, Bruno Mars, Peter Hernandez, right? Like he, but he was gone for a long time. You know, it wasn't like he just like one day was like, I'm going to leave Hawaii and go be famous. It was like he spent many, many years on the mainland, you know, and he had his first drop deal with Motown. And then, you know, when Harv from the Grammys like picked him up, that was to me like the chance that set him up. That was the team that set him up for success in LA. Yeah.
You spend time in LA, you spend time obviously growing up and living most of your life in Hawaii. And it is such a unique place. Like that is something where if you go to Hawaii and you do not embrace the culture, it just isn't going to work. You're not going to fit in. But if you do go to Hawaii and you do embrace the culture, you're going to find it the most beautiful, amazing place in the world. Can you share a little bit? I know people that are listening and watching this from your audience, of course, already know this, but from our audience that maybe has never been to Hawaii, can you share some of the difference, even just cultural differences from your time on the mainland versus Hawaii when it comes to music?
When it comes to music,
and even whatever you were just about to say, first share that, and then I want to dive into music too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first I'll say that one of the biggest cultural differences we have, which does lead to how we work in music, is that we're raised to think about others before ourselves. You know, we're like, if you don't think about what you're doing and how it affects other people, like there are repercussions, you know, from your family, your uncles. My neighbor whooped my ass, you know, when I was a kid doing something wrong, you know, like, so yeah. And so like, that's like ingrained to us, you know? So like it affects everything from like the way we drive, the way we check out at the grocery store, and even to like how we support things or like create things. And so I think that in LA, it's the complete opposite. You know, my time there, it's like when you collaborate with people, it's very different, right? It's like me first, you know, like it's everyone's self-soothing, right? Everyone's trying to like fulfill their needs if they're not at a place of like, you know, security. And I would say that in Hawaii, I think we're more likely to be considerate of like the vibe in the room, or like considering others. Like if I in LA, if I go to a session, right, like no one's going to think to bring anything for the people who are hosting, or or just like buy lunch, right? I have one collaborator in Malibu that always like just like provides coffee. We get there's a nice sign that says welcome. You know, she feeds us lunch and dinner. She tries to like, her name is Nittany Paris, and she has a company called Artist Max with Ken Clay, who produced Rumors. And she will like just be the most gracious host and collaborator when we have sessions with her, and we'll be there like all day, all night. But in most cases in LA, right, it's like lunchtime or 2 hours after lunch. It's like, hey, we should order Uber Eats. Anyone else hungry? Okay. You know, like, but in Hawaii, like you go to someone's house and like I'll have sessions with new artists and they're bringing us like cookies and like cupcakes, you know, or something. It might be lunch. They'll bring like pizza. Like at a session yesterday, they brought like calzones from Whole Foods. I was like, you really didn't have to do that. Like we're, as the host, should do that, you know, but it's like, it processed in their mind that that was something they were supposed to do. I think it's just the co-write or the making of the records. It's all about the vibe in the room. And even though co-writing, collaborating isn't built into our musical education, I think it would work really, really well if we indoctrinated more people in Hawaii into collaborating musically. Yeah.
When you say co-writing isn't part of your culture, what do you mean by that? There's like a historic integrity to like being the sole writer, or is it just the idea of collaborating just didn't happen?
It just wasn't like, yeah, you'll write a song with your friend, but most, especially like when I was growing as like a music artist, you don't go to a session with like other creatives or a producer or other writers and say, we're going to write a great song today. It's kind of like, I have my ukulele like right here, right? Oh, nice. Like this is like me in high school, right? I have like my ukulele and like I like figure out like how to play songs, and then I write my own song, and then and that's it, right? Whatever I write, that's the song. I take it to the studio, I pay the person at the studio and they record it, and they might say, maybe we'll rearrange these little sections, right? Like that to me is like might be the extent of like my understanding of like collaboration up until I was in like a co-writing session in LA.
The mainland taught you co-writing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Like being around like real writers that like all they do is write, right? They're just songwriters, or they're just producers.
To play devil's advocate, sorry to cut you off. Yeah. It's like a lot of people, you're saying like to be on the mainland and to be with real songwriters in LA, and then some people will literally say the total opposite, where it's like, oh, you're only a real songwriter if you don't co-write. You know what I mean? Where it's like you're only a true Bob Dylan or a true Bruce Springsteen or a true Tom Petty or whatever. If there's two different ways to look at it, where it's very much just like you're shunned upon for like, oh, my publisher is going to sit me with 3 writes every single day for 365 days a year in Nashville, and I'm a slave to songwriting, and I'm just writing the same, you know. I just find it really interesting that I mean, what you described as your extent of co-writing is just an engineer chiming in, which is the absolute bare minimum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was wild for me to like experience that. And it was a hard transition when I first, like was forced to do that, but I love it now. To me, like that is the way, like quoting The Mandalorian, right? Like to me, it's like the best music I've written, the music I'm most proud of has come out of those scenarios where it wasn't just my idea or my input. It was that competitive atmosphere and like a bunch of people like in a life raft, trying to find the song that made the most beautiful work. It's kind of like movies, right? Movies have like thousands of people that work in all these different creative departments. And like after several years and a bunch of money, it's like you have the Lord of the Rings, right? Whereas like music, it's like there's 2 guys, maybe, and like you throw them in that same life raft and say like, go make something great,
Spot on.
Yeah.
I think
my parents' generation, I will say, like they really appreciated songwriting. And I think because my generation and my peers, like we grew up listening to like Blink-182, okay. I think we aspired to be artists more so than like aspire to like write music. And so most of our time was spent in the garage, right? Like playing in bands or like playing with one another, right?
Yeah.
And there was no time that we spent like, you know, equal amount of time that was like, okay, I'm gonna write a great song. You know, it's like you had to write a song to play with the band, but it wasn't like you spent all your time, you know, like obsessing over writing songs. Where I think my parents and like my uncles, they loved like Kenny Loggins and Jim Messina, right? Or it was Neil Young or Bob Dylan, right? And like there was a whole culture in the 60s and 70s it was all about songs. You know, like you could argue like whether or not they were like great singers, but it was primarily focused on the songs. 100%. And I think now it's different. Like we see superstars and like, man, I also want to be like Bob Marley, right? Like, but you don't appreciate Bob as like, man, as a songwriter, he was fantastic, right? He had a great group of people around him.
Kind of like chiming in on that. Like, here's just a little bit of a side thing, but it's like, here's an extreme example of what you just said. And I just discovered this like a week ago, and this blows my mind. Shania Twain, okay? One of the best-selling artists of all time. Sex symbol, mega pop star, country star, like female country Jesus. Like, she's unbelievable.
Right.
She alone wrote every single song she ever released. The reason we don't talk about that, there's no marketing value to it at all. I had no idea until I didn't even Google it. I just like looked in her metadata. She wrote every single song she released by herself. She's like the Bob Dylan of what she does. And then I'm like, was this hidden? And then so I Googled it more, and it was like every interview, even on her like Instagram page, she talks about songwriting. She's like, I love the cadence, and she's talking about the rhythm, and she's like a songwriting nerd. And I'm like, I think we just overlooked it all these years because she was hot. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's a funny thing. Like you're saying, it's like when we're kids, we just want to be Led Zeppelin, and the prerequisite to being Led Zeppelin, or like the grunt work, is like actually writing the song. You know what I mean? Where that's actually the most important thing by a landslide. And then
you write all your music, right?
Wait, what?
You write, Skrizz? Do you write all of your music? Is that all you? Every song is
I
all
co-write
you,
every once in a while. I co-write every once in a while. I co-write first. I write like 90% of it by myself, but I co-write. Kind of chiming in what Chaz said. Two really interesting things. He was like, you kind of described the songwriting session scenario as competitive, but then you also just like 5 seconds later described it as you all on a life raft trying to get to like land. And I think it's like a really interesting thing. It's like, you're surrounding yourself with talent, and you're challenging each other to get better in a competitive sense, but you're also like helping each other and raising each other. And I think a lot of people don't realize that about like my second album was, I think, almost entirely co-written with a good friend of mine, Bryce. And then the most recent album, I barely worked with him at all. And it's not because I don't like Bryce. It's because like when I was in this competitive helping each other scenario, we just plowed through every wall together to the point where I think I was talking about this on my last podcast. Like now I wake up and I'm just like, it's almost like my co-writers are with me all the time, even when I'm alone, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like you can still like hear their true north, right? Like,
yes. And I know what they would have done. And like, I have more confidence to know what I will do. And like, I've been there so many times that I'm not intimidated by what's going to go wrong. I just know it's going to go right. I think you'd probably understand that.
Yeah. It's like, it's the education we could have never, paid for. It's priceless, that those experiences, even though they could be rough, the first, 50 times or so, but you're right. Like, it's like, I have a sense of what's good or maybe not so good because of, getting schooled, because of writers or artists or producers that were more seasoned than me, that were coaching me and explaining like, this is better because of blank, They have
an explanation for why this wording is better, why this cadence is better, why the melody should change here. And like, you at a certain point in time heard their explanation, you understood it and you agreed with it, and now it's part of your mental vocabulary.
Right.
That's just totally what it is.
Right.
And like, back to what you were saying about like sessions going wrong, it's like, sometimes you'll get in sessions and like certain people you will never click with, but you learn from that fact that you're never going to click with those people too.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you guys hop in the studio, when you guys hop in the studio, do you always know the person you're collaborating with, or have you ever been thrown into a
All
situation
the
where
time.
you have never talked to them,
time.
never met them, and how the hell
One
do
of the
you
worst
like?
experiences of my
How do you?
life. All the time.
Yeah, talk to me as someone who's never been in a studio before. I'm sure a lot of the listeners, same thing. Like, guys, talk to me. What is that like?
I'm just an asshole.
I
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
I think when we started, we were assholes, as you put it.
Yeah, when you're younger, you're an asshole. Then you get older, you get
Yeah.
humbled, and you realize you don't know anything.
We were just like so determined to just make the best thing instead of just having the best vibe with that person. And what I
Awesome.
learned
Best
was
vibe.
like
Exactly.
the best song we could produce and write with the person, if they don't feel connected to it, if they don't like us, they didn't like the experience, they will never cut it. They'll never represent it. And especially if you're not the writer, right? Or the artist, sorry. If you're not the artist, right? Like they got to spend their money on the music video. They got to spend their money like marketing and going on television talking about it.
They got to post it.
You know, like maybe back in the day when you had a record label that was like, hey, look, we're spending millions of dollars on you. You got to go push this single, right? Like that's like not the world we live in Hawaii. You know, most people aren't with a record label that's dropping, you know, the $250K to like launch their career. And so we had to learn to be sensitive and put them first. And so instead of investing in all this like equipment or like the best like, you know, preamp or microphone, we had to invest into like, man, what's going to make these guys feel comfortable because they've never been around us and we don't know them either, right? So I was like, okay, well, instead of buying this, like, let's go buy a good coffee machine. You know, let's buy some good accommodations. Like, let's buy some lights. You know, let's make sure we have furniture. You know,
Good
like
couch, good things.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
the room's got to be vibey as hell. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
So I would say like we try to write at least like do at least 4 sessions a week with artists, and it's hard. We would love to do it twice a day if we could, but right now we're doing like 4 co-writing sessions with outside collaborators a week.
Pretty good.
And I would say the majority of the time, maybe like 2 out of 4 will be new people. So like last night we just worked with a new artist. Like we never met her, don't know much about her, just talked to her manager, you know, had a text feed, you know, looked her up on like YouTube and Spotify. And yeah, we had to like start by like getting to know them, so ask them about, we like interview them, right? Like tell us like what's your story, you know, what do you care about right now? And just give them that time to like go through, you know, their feelings and like just get comfortable themselves with us, you know. But yeah, very like I think every single person is going to be different, right? We're not going to believe or care about the same things, you know. We're not going to like the same things, even like the same music. And at the end of the day, like we're not there to like impart our brand on them. Like our job is to like best support what their vision is, and hopefully like take whatever it is that they care about and put it into like a great focused song that other people would like to hear as well. Yeah.
You kind of nailed something I was about to say. The term I always use when I'm co-writing with another artist for another artist is, we'll do like the verse or we'll do the pre-chorus. I'm like, I'll ask like almost aggressively, like, does this feel on brand for you? Because you know, a new artist will be too afraid to speak up. And I'm like, I don't care about how you feel emotionally, like whatever you're going through, does this feel on brand? Does this reflect your brand? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the things you really want to like, you want to play devil's advocate immediately for them, because they're not going to speak up and say it. Be like, hey, this doesn't feel like, does it? So you want to be like, you want to be almost rooting against yourself so they can chime in and be like, yo, you're right, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Like, if they're going to defend it and be like, this is working, and then you're like, okay, pat on the back, we're doing something right.
Yeah.
That's definitely something I've come across a lot. Or I think with that too, with younger artists, I've had one artist come to me like, we don't really know what our brand is. And I'm like, well, that's an honest answer too. So
let me throw a probably a ridiculous scenario at you guys. So you guys are 2 very different type of artists and producers in a lot of ways, at least the way I see it.
Sure.
So let's say we had like reality show, little competition right now, and we got thrown in a room. We're like, hey, we get $1 million right now if we get a top 40 hit in the next 30 days. Chaz, you know, you and Skrizz, you guys are getting in the studio. You got to create a top 40 hit.
We could definitely do
What is
Yeah.
the first thing that you guys are doing though? I love it. We could definitely do that. I love that confidence.
We would just
What
hedge our
is the-
bets. We'd party for
Yeah, what is the
2
first thing
days,
that you
30
guys,
days.
what's the first, yeah, Chaz, what's the first thing you're doing? Skrizz, what's the first thing you're doing to make sure that in the next 30 days, we're all getting $1 million check because we have a top 40 hit?
I think the first 30 minutes are like sacred. We gotta make sure like we connect, that we're like we have a good like we're locked in, we understand.
Yeah, we
And it's like,
that synergy.
yeah, because I think the worst thing that could happen if we were gonna make that song is that everyone goes into their corners and like does their best work alone,
No.
but then they come back and then we have to sift through all of that and like work out the conflicts of what everyone else just did, and that's going to take way longer to like reconnect because everyone was just like in their own personal space. It's like, oh, okay, like you do this and then maybe we'll work on this and then we'll come back together. But I think there also has to be a conversation of like, okay, well, what kind of song are we going to make? What's the vibe? Or like what I would say, Skrizz, is what planet is this song going to live on? What sonic planet does this record live in?
What universes does it work in? What universes do we not work in? And figure out those universes and just dial the fuck in on that.
Yep, exactly. I've been saying that a lot lately because a lot of people are into like like astrology, right? And like music. And so when I go like, oh, what planet, what does your record sonically live on? And I don't want them to say Neptune. I want them to be like, oh, it lives on like her and I don't know, some artist, I don't know, Rihanna planet, but it sounds like a Drake record.
Sure.
Yeah, something.
Sonics of a
So Chaz, for you, it's what planet does it live on? So that's gonna be the focus. Is what planet is the song gonna live on? Skrizz, what about you?
I think Chaz kind of nailed it, honestly. And I'm just kind of reiterating what he said. Is like, A, find the workflow, find how we're like how we work together. It's like, are you like I have my select co-writers, and I know that I'm a opening line guy, and then my other people are like lyrical mechanics, and like I'm a melody starter, they're melody tweakers. I'm on guitar banging out all the chords, or your guys doing the drum programming. We figure out our workflow.
Yeah.
And then we could probably figure it out within one day again, like what's the sonic universe? What's the emotional universe? What's like, who's the protagonist also? Like if we are not the artists here, or maybe we are the artists, like what is the narrative of the protagonist? Am I a 25-year-old girl? Am I a 30-year-old boy? Like what am I? And then we just dial that in, and then we just try to just do a numbers game to it. And that would be it. That'd be the way to do it. And then we hit your dad at the radio station, Adam, and he'll blast. Your dad's still at the radio station?
No, not anymore. He's retired now. He's
no way!
Retired.
Oh,
that's awesome.
I still haven't met the guy. He's a legend.
He's a legend.
We've told enough stories on the podcast. One story we haven't told. So Chaz, we have a little ticker that we haven't put up quite yet, but the ticker is how many times we mentioned Kanye in a podcast, and this is officially
the first time we mentioned Kanye West. He already did.
Oh, true.
Yes, we did it. We did it. He did it without us even telling him to. Yes, you're welcome back anytime, dude.
Wait, what happened?
So
I mentioned Kanye?
You mentioned Kanye
West.
You're like,
we talk about Kanye.
Dude, I love Kanye. Like, I have some Kanye stories I can't tell on air. I've never met the guy, but like being in Hawaii, like I know some interesting things about Kanye that I cannot speak on.
Fantasy there.
And 808s and Heartbreaks.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, the locals must know a lot.
And then. Watch the Throne, like part of it was worked on during those same sessions here. Yeah.
Locals have a lot to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah. Like there's so many of his collaborators, right? They say like, oh, the first time we worked with him was when he flew us to Hawaii for his camp, right?
Of
like
course,
Pusha T,
a million times.
Kid Cudi, right? And it's like, yeah, like I know I can point out the house they all stayed at. Like Adam probably knows the studio too that they worked at, why they chose it. Well, I can disclose that, right? So Avex, then Island Sound Studios, that was the studio they did the record at. And the reason why they picked that location is because one, it's like a world-class studio, but two, if there's paparazzi, they can exit by boat because it's, there's a river, right? There's a boat dock. So they just jump on the boat, get out of there.
Of course, Kanye exits the studio via boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
But,
so that's good that
yeah.
we're all Kanye supporters. I always like to say he's a friend of mine because he hugged me once and said, "What's up, little Rosen?" We're not actually friends, but I like to say we're friends because of that.
Bro, you got a Kanye hug.
Dude,
You're
that's
already light years ahead of
legend.
us.
Oh, that's a legend. Love it. Love it.
Chaz, one thing I want to make sure we can get through here, because the name of the podcast for a reason, The Rise. Like we like to talk, we like to talk about good stuff and wins and all that. But as you know, as all three of us know, there's a lot of shit that we go through, frankly, each and every day that we're constantly going through in order to get to where we all hope to go. So number one, I'm really curious as to what is your vision? Like, where do you want to go? But then number two, like, tell us some shit that you've had to go through where maybe you almost quit. Maybe you almost said, screw this. I'm going out to do something else that's a hell of a lot easier. Like, give us a story of shit and give us a story of like where you want to go.
Okay. Well, let's start with the positive first, and like we'll sandwich this, right? So the positive is where I want to go. In the next 5 years, I want to train an army of producers that don't want to make a business model out of, oh yeah, I'll like record, you said local indie artists.
Yeah.
I want an army of producers that's like interested in like cutting songs quickly and just sticking to like what they're good at, but also like embracing like some of the art of songwriting. Like I think they should have enough of a background understanding. This is what makes a great song, right? Like this is how you do a pre, this is how you do a bridge. When I was working in LA, like I'll get to more of this in a second, but I moved out there to be in a group that that's a whole nother story. But anyway, like I did a lot, right? Like I did a lot of the business, did a lot of like the connections and networking, aside of performing and like writing, but I was only engineering the group at the time. And so, in a record cycle, I remember we had about like 100 songs. We must have written 100 songs in this record cycle with co-writers. But ultimately the record that got cut only had 5 songs on the EP. That's 95 sessions with well over 95 people that are like, what happened to the song, right? The writers didn't have a means to cut the song, and we, the artists, didn't have a means to cut the song. And I remember thinking back on that as like, man, I'm doing everything and I'm like dying doing everything. Like I was like physically sick because before I left, the group decided, oh, we're going to do Patreon. We're going to try to like release a song a week, with a music video. We were trying to like write, cut music video every single week. And I was like dying because we're still gigging like 5 days a week, right? We're touring, going to meetings, like all this stuff. And I remember thinking, man, I wish I had a way to just focus on the part of this process that I'm like actually good at. And I couldn't explain that to anyone. Every time I would try to explain like, look, I'm not a mixing engineer. I'm terrible at this. It takes me a long time to mix records. I am not good at that. I'm good at this, but I'm definitely not good at that, right? And so I wanted to put together an army of like, okay, you're a great mixing engineer, you're a great mastering engineer, you're a great vocal producer, editor, recording. And I was like, I want a team of that. Because if I'm going to go do a session, I would rather have an army of people that could like finish the record and like be equitable and share with those people than versus like there's like 5 writers and only one guy has the power and the resources to like cut the record.
Yeah.
So for me, like I would like to see my friends like cut better records here in Hawaii, and I want to see like my friends thrive and like have a business model where they don't have to constantly tour or like cut records. It's like because of part of our business is in sync, we wake up every day and all we do is work with the next project that we probably won't see any money from 2 years from now, down the line. But it's nice to not have that pressure of like having to pay your rent. Not that my rent is high, but having to pay your rent because you have to cut the next record. Mm-hmm. I love that. Our first 5 years for my partner and I was about waking up and just like working on the music that's going to pay our rent 2 years from now. And as of this year, we're finally at a place where our back end, it's like carrying our general expenses. And so like that's my vision and my dream and belief for like all of my peers here in Hawaii is that they could maybe diversify their money, but still in music so that they can have the resources to further their career. I think you can do both. There's 365 days in a year. I have a wife, I have kids, I have other responsibilities, and like I can work on 150 plus songs, a year. Like that was last year. And this year we're trying to do 300 songs. And so to me, it's like, yeah, like you can be an artist and release records regularly, like once a month, and still do a bunch of other things.
I agree. I am that person too. So
yeah, dude,
possible.
I believe it, right?
Possible.
Yeah, and so there's that.
Real quick on that, Chaz. Before you move on to the next piece, and I want to give both you guys, your due right here. Skrizz, like you do a phenomenal job of just constantly putting out new music after new music, but it's not like you just put out new music. Like, and I talk about this all the time with my business partner, because we listen to you freaking like in our place in Cyprus right now, jamming out to Skrizz. Like, we're like, dude, he just constantly puts out just great music after great music, and it's consistent. It's not like we have to wait 2 years. I want to kind of
actually piggyback on what Chaz said. The answer to your question, Adam, is what Chaz just said. And like, I want Adam, write this one. Let's definitely do a podcast about this. Maybe Chaz join us on this one too. The thing that you nailed on the head is something I've been preaching like crazy, and people do not realize it. You have to focus on what you are good at. And if you are not 110% at mixing or vocal comping or mastering or this part of the writing process, you need to work with somebody who is and come up with a business model that is, I am literally texting somebody while the podcast who is my vocal comper, and we are delegating that. And I know I am good at like 3 things in the record making process, and I'm good at overseeing the whole thing. So you really have to work with people around you and incentivize. And like, how do you incentivize them? Be really, really good at what you do. Michael Jordan being Michael Jordan incentivizes the shit out of Scottie Pippen. You know what I mean? That's just
and he needed Scottie Pippen. He needed Steve Kerr. He needed Luke Longley.
Really nailed that, and no one's talking about it. Like,
and Chaz,
it's not cool, right? It's not cool, like if you are a big time producer or if you are a or an artist, right? To be like, oh yeah, like my team around me is like why this works, right? They gave me the tools. Like you're just not trained to do that in PR shape, right? You're not. But like the truth is, like, like people are successful because it was a collaborative effort, right? That's how you get the Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how you consistently win championships. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
The pieces have to complement each other. It doesn't matter if it's music, business, sports, it doesn't matter. And Chaz, what I think is cool about what you're doing, what you're working on, and specifically in the Hawaii community, because it is a unique community than being on the mainland, is I always think with anything in life, if you want to be successful, the greatest thing you can give a young child, but really anybody, is just showing them that it's what's possible if you do X, Y, and Z. And that's what I think you're doing a phenomenal job of. And, when you talk about your vision and where you want to go, like there's no greater gift you can give to the community versus saying, hey, here's what's possible. It ain't going to be easy, but if you want it, here's the steps to do that. And we're here to help you along the way, which, if you don't have that, how can you can't hit what you can't see, right? The quote from Zig Ziglar, you can't hit what you can't see. And you're just showing them what's possible and also giving them the tools to get there.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So now let's hear about the shit. Let's hear about like the times if there was any like
shit. I'll tell you. Okay, so like one of the hardest ones for me was in 2019 in January my son was born. And before he was born, I knew it was my last opportunity in LA to like just dig deep and like get another internship, like shadowing someone that I could learn something from. And I would always take those opportunities, if there was something I wanted to learn that I was passionate about, I would find the guy and like, I need to learn about how to run and build playback tracks in a system, like stuff like that. And so these guys were a songwriting production team. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Here's a team that like I've known for a couple years. They've worked on some high profile things and like a really killer kids movie soundtrack that everyone knows. And I don't want to mention their names, and they were very gracious. Like we were both interested in working together. And so I said, hey, look, like this is my last opportunity. I don't know what's going to happen after my son is born. I don't know if I'm going to have to like leave music. I don't know if I have to like move back home to Hawaii. but I want to learn how to work more in like songwriting production, scenarios, and like co-writing, and especially like for like sync. They were doing a lot of stuff with like Fox and Stars. And there was one day where there was a session, and we had worked with another cat. His name is Andrew Merritt. He's one of the most amazing writers and accessible people I've ever met. He did a lot of the early like Chris Brown stuff. Like he's just awesome. He's helped so many people. And there was another top liner, this female there, and I don't remember her name. But essentially, before the session, they were like, "Hey, look, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to make a song like this. So we can either pay you, or we can give you a split, right, spec." And I said, "Hey, look, you invited me to the session. I'm here to learn. I'm okay with either scenario. Since you invited me here, you tell me if you want to pay me like hourly, fine, I will take that. If you want to give me spec, I'll do that." And then we said that once again when the session ended. And so cut the song after a long day. A couple months later, there was interest for the song. They texted me like, "Oh, so-and-so is interested in the song." I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome. That's great." And then several months later, my son's about to be born, and I see the song on the television. It was with Steve Harvey, and he's promoting I think it was Miss America pageant. It was like the promo commercial. I was like, "Oh, that's sick. That's the song." I'm like 100% certain that's the song, right? And then they start posting about it, and they're like, "Oh, awesome. We got this thing." They even texted me like, "Hey, look, we got this thing. That's awesome." I'm like, "Okay, so what's happening?" Right? Like if the song is on television, that means like 30 to 90 days from now, someone's going to get paid. And they just straight up just said like, "Oh yeah, like we're just going to cut you out of it." And I was like, "Wait, what?" They're like, "Yeah, because before the session, we had told the other collaborators that, like we weren't going to do anything. We weren't going to give you anything." I was like, "You could have just told me that then, why would you offer and ask me what I wanted
They just cut you $100
at the beginning, and then at the back, I would have rather just known that day, like, yeah, it's okay. Like you're not going to be a part of this." And I would have been fine with that. Right. I would have been cool with the communication. Like, I understand that I'm building my way up, and I need those opportunities. But just that like flip on the script, and just like, kind of like, it was like you showed one face and then just like completely became a different person after the fact. I was just like, okay, I'm not going to like mess with this anymore, like I'm just gonna go do something else. I'm not gonna work with those folks. And they're extremely good at what they do. I learned a lot watching and observing them, especially the production style. But it just like that left a bad taste in my mouth. And my son was born. I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work, but I clearly, this relationship that I invested in, I'm not going to be able to like continue to do that. That is not the way to like, grow my career or provide for my family. And so, yeah, that was difficult, like, cause I really, love those people. I really looked up to them, but then that character change or flaw was something that was like, man, that's not cool. I think like just regular, like the communication could have like solved that conflict so easily versus like saying and doing, something completely different. And like, I get it. That happens all the time in the music industry. Like, does it need to happen? No, not really, especially with people you've known for like several years, and just never worked with. And so, yeah, I would say that was like a conflict that was very difficult for me at the time. And I just decided, what, I'm just going to like make my own team. I'm going to embed a culture of my own team that like, hey, look, we will always have conflict, but we always try to communicate up front with whoever we're working with and each other. Like, hey, this is what you're going to get. Like if we cut this song or if you artists cut this song, this is like what we expect. This is what you get, like here's a split sheet, let us know if you ever have to change it. Like I think a lot of those pop scenarios in LA, like we're so greedy about small percentage points. We're fighting over like 1 or 2% or 0.05. And I think that now that I'm doing that same type of work successfully, I don't want to do that. To me, it's like, if even if I never work with you again, I think you always deserve what you put into that creation of that product, that song. And even if like you might not like me or vice versa, I will always pay you the money you deserve, for the rest of your life, and then some, because we had that agreement. I need to honor that agreement. So yeah, there's a worse scenario than that, like but that was like the last straw where it like really impressed upon me that I can do better. I can make that change within our own company. And I have a business partner that I started TheBrewz with, and he's no longer a part of the company. But my joy, and he's like a friend of mine to this day. And one of my great joys is that every quarter I get to cut him his royalty check. I get to like give back to him what he put in, that we continue to benefit from. And, I get to like support him and his family, as they grow and they, go on their journey and their careers. So that to me is like very healing for myself, that I get to do for my collaborators what others couldn't do for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Sometimes those toughest lessons are the reason we finally break it's the last straw, right? Where we finally say, no more of this, and we're going to make our big change. And it sucked. You obviously could have made some money from that, but the amount of money you gain from that lesson is a hell of a lot more than whatever you would have made from that spec. Yeah.
And you know what? You can always make more music, It was hard for me to hear at the time, but now it's like I've made so much more music that, benefits me. And, I'm where I am in my career. I have no idea where those people in their career is, but, I know that I'm continuing to just build relationships off of just goodwill. Yeah.
Absolutely. So go ahead, and then we'll
close it off
to wrap up.
Yeah. I kind of want to piggyback off what Chaz said. There's like a Pharrell quote that he speaks upon. It's like, making music got you here, and when you get in a tough situation, making music will get you out of there.
That's right.
And I think the name of the game is, if you want to work in music, you just got to make music all the time, and it's going to take you through everything. Yeah. I mean, look, Pharrell. It's Pharrell. Yeah. So I think it's a message to any of the musicians out there that are like in that tough record deal, or they got their $1 million deal and they're stuck and they don't know what to do. Like, just keep making music. That will get you the mix engineer you want. That'll get you the agent you want. That'll get you whatever you want. Just make the music. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a currency. Skrizz always, exactly. It's the currency. Skrizz always with the wise words, almost to wrap it up. But before we wrap it up though, Chaz, share what you're working on, what you're most excited about, and then of course how people can find you. So give a little shout out to all the good stuff that's going on with you.
I'll say, if you want to find us, just go to our IG. It's TheBrewz, Brewz with a Z, 808, and our link tree populates with all of our links and information. If you want to see our latest sync or our discography, like we have like 8 or 9 hours worth of like music we've collaborated on at this point. That's all of our releases go up on that playlist. And I'm trying to think what else. Oh, we're going to relaunch our website next week. We'll finally have merch. We got a bag of coffee that we did with our favorite coffee shop in Portland, Push and Pull. Shout out to those guys. So Brewz, we got to sell some like coffee beans, to the good folks that love coffee beans. And we have a long sleeve pale pink shirt that we're going to put out really soon too. That's going to say Sync Local on the back. And so that's going to be like our walking billboards to like just promote that kind of culture here in Hawaii. Support your local creators, support your local music makers. I'm trying to think what else.
Instagram. And by the way, we'll put all these links. So you can get a link to that you want to drop in there. We'll put it in there. But any other links? Instagram. Like our YouTube, we have like some travel vlogs when we're like doing records. But really, like, we're not trying to like be big artists. So like we try not to spend too much time doing the socials. I try to post once a day on Instagram and keep people up to date. But we're just trying to do our best to like support other local artists here. And we're trying to prove with our record release, like, hey, this is how you release a record, and not just like let it go into the ether, like
love it.
We're trying to like push the record for a solid 3 months, every single day, like a new PR thing or a new marketing thing, or like, here's a video, here's a new music video, here's a live video, we're going to be on the news tomorrow, that sort of thing. We're just trying to break to the general public, whether or not they like our music or not. Like, hey, we exist. This is who we are. And so thanks for giving us an opportunity today to like be on your show.
We could talk all day.
And rep us. And yeah, we're actually wrapping our next record right now. So we finished this record like a year ago. So in the same way, we're trying to show our peers, this is how you do a record release. You know, you queue it up at least 3 to 6 months prior. And so right now, this coming month, we're going to be finishing our record that we put out next summer. And I haven't said this publicly yet, but like the moment that we wrap this record cycle at the end of August, we're going to drop a EP in September, top of September. And it's going to be completely different. It's like Tyler, the Creator, like indie, like some rock elements, like real funky, weird hip hop beats, stuff that we've never dabbled in before. But there's this artist here that I'm putting my money on. His name is Devin Chef. All of his friends are getting publishing deals, and this is the one guy that I met from that group is like unsigned. The dude is like Jay-Z, comes in the studio, writes quick, cuts it, you know, and like he can do he'll do all his ad-libs, all his doubles, like perfect timing. He'll say, hey, change this emotion. He's just he's like a doctor, like in the studio. Like I've never seen anything like it in 15 years, like a MC like that. Check this guy out, Devin Chef. We're going to drop an EP with him. And trying to think what else. Yeah. And then after we drop that EP, we're just doing singles every month. So we're going to do the thing that we're preaching and telling artists like, hey, drop a single every month. We're going to do that after September.
I love it. That's the way to do it. I like album, EP, singles. That's you shouldn't wait 6 months after the album comes out to do something. It's just get right to the next thing because it promotes the album. It always points back.
Exactly.
The best marketing for old music is new music.
Hey, there you go. There you go.
You guys just got so much wisdom inside of that head of this.
No wisdom.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Well, Chaz, man, I appreciate you being on. It was great to chop it up with you for a bit. And we appreciate you being here with us.
Dude, thanks for the productivity.
Guys. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I look forward to meeting you one day, Skrizz.
Yeah, I got to come to Adam, take me to Hawaii.
Yeah, dude. Come down, man.
For sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll record an in-person, in-studio podcast.
It would be sick.
Yeah. Maybe a little writing camp, maybe a little vacation.
Oh, yeah. Why not make music?
Yeah.
We'll be like Kanye. We'll be like Kanye. We'll be doing what Kanye.
Why not, right? Why not?
Cool. All right, gents. We'll talk soon, all right?
It's been real. Peace out.
Guys.
See ya.
Aloha.
Bye.